This is the biggest Hindu temple outside India. It is also a temple that was planned by two leaders, that is UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2018. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi took over in 2014, one of his first projects was to reach out to the Gulf countries. When IC-814 hijacking happened in 1999 December, the Indian ambassador was not even allowed to go inside the airbase where the hijacked flight had landed before it took out for Kandahar. That was the state of relations. UAE has the single largest Indian passport carrying diaspora in the world. It is 3.54 million. Today, UAE is the seventh largest investor to India, the third largest trade partner, and a country which actually is totally committed and supports the Indian vision in the Gulf and in the globe. UAE, for instance, has close ties with Russia also, has a engagement with China also, but it is India which UAE has actually sought after, and that is because UAE wants to go beyond being simply called Islamic Emirate. Currently, it feels that India and UAE, the two economies, are now getting more and more entwined with each other.
It's the season of temples. The Ram temple in Ayodhya created national ripples. And now there's another temple, this time in the deeply Islamic state of UAE, that is making international waves. Yes, Prime Minister Modi will be inaugurating the Hindu temple, the first Hindu temple in the Middle East, the first traditional Hindu temple in the Middle East in Abu Dhabi on February 14th, and that will be an international spectacle because it's a deeply Islamic country which is going to be hosting this temple. Not just the temple is going to be located, they've not just allowed the building of the temple, they've actually encouraged the building of the temple, and that's a big achievement in itself. And to sort of discuss all of this, we have with us Hindustan Times executive editor Shishir Gupta in Point Blank today. Shishir, tell us about this big ticket event next week. What's the significance of this temple being inaugurated in a deeply Islamic state of the UAE?
Namaskar. Aditi, this is the biggest Hindu temple outside India. It is also a temple that was planned by two leaders, that is UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2018. It's a temple which is spread over 27 acres of land and with absolute delicate carvings and a beautiful spectacle at that. The temple in a country which is an Islamic Emirate, where the religion is Islam, has its basis when Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed for the first time in UAE in August 2015. He straightaway went to the mosque which was named after Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, father, Sheikh Zayed. That mosque is the biggest mosque after Makkah and Medina. So UAE has a tradition of building big under the leadership of Mohammed bin Zayed or Sheikh MBZ. This temple is part of that series, but it also is a showcase of how the India-UAE ties have progressed over the years.
As I said earlier, it's not just that they allowed the building of this temple, they've actually welcomed it. Even, I think the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi even donated land for this Hindu temple, and that's a big thing in itself.
Absolutely, and let me also tell you that it was the duty of the External Affairs Minister, Subramaniam Jaishankar, to ensure that the building, the project was completed in time, and the total focus was there in the building of this temple, which itself is a symbol of India-UAE ties.
Talking about India-UAE ties, Shishir, there was a lot of suspicion between the two nations. The UAE viewed India, not just the UAE, Saudi, Bahrain, these rich Middle East countries, Arab nations, they viewed India with a lot of suspicion at one time. India viewed these nations with a lot of suspicion at one time. All the wanted goons and terrorists, they sort of in India sought refuge there in the UAE, for instance. So there was a lot of suspicion between these two nations. But what has changed? When did these relations start changing to the level today that now we are talking in terms of really building a Hindu temple out there? Also, we're talking in terms of the India-Middle East economic corridor, and UAE will be a part of that. But I'll come to the economic corridor later. But just talk to us about what has changed from suspicion to trust.
So, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi took over in 2014, one of his first projects was to reach out to the Gulf countries, because he knew that the Indian diaspora was there, which was actually remitting in large amounts back to India. Now, the initial forays were made at the level of, intelligence officials, at the level of the National Security Advisor, at the level of then Foreign Secretary, that is S. Jaishankar. Now, what happened in that was, when we reached out to the UAE leaders said very clearly, he said, listen, you have been viewing us through the prism of Pakistan. Our relationship has nothing to do with Pakistan. We look at you bilaterally. And that is where it all started. So you shedded let's say, the evil eye of Pakistan, and you decided to engage bilaterally. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit followed in 2015, which was the first visit after 34 years by an Indian leader. The last one was Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1981. Let me also tell you that when IC-814 hijacking happened in 1999 December, the Indian ambassador was not even allowed to go inside the airbase where the hijacked flight had landed before it took out for Kandahar. That was the state of relations. The lot of terrorists, lot of criminals were taking refuge in UAE, and they were actually targeting India via UAE with the help of Pakistani deep state. Now, all that has changed. Let me tell you today, UAE has the single largest Indian passport carrying diaspora in the world. It is 3.54 million. UAE is the new Singapore for Indians, where professionals, lawyers, businessmen and everybody have congregated over there. UAE today is India's one of the closest allies, which is now going to sign a bilateral investment treaty. All has changed with the visionary leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. The relationship is absolutely transforming. Today, UAE is the 7th largest investor to India, the 3rd largest trade partner, and a country which actually is totally committed and supports the Indian vision in the Gulf and in the globe.
It's very interesting what you pointed out about the Indian diaspora there and the Indian investments there. How much of this closeness or UAE's realization or wanting to liaise with India more deeply comes from the fact of India's rising stature in the world, its growing closeness with the United States, which is because US literally was the sole mostly the sole guarantor of peace and security in the Middle East, especially and Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain have traditionally been viewed as US friendly countries. How much has the changing dynamics of the India-US relationship and India's rising stature in the world got to do with this?
That's a very valid question. Now, the point in this is that over the years, US is no longer the guarantor of peace in the Middle East, and the countries, important countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, they have started to look at other options. UAE, for instance, has close ties with Russia also, has a engagement with China also, but it is India which UAE has actually sought after, and that is because UAE wants to go beyond being simply called Islamic Emirate, simply called as an energy producing state. It's a state which currently is opposed to Muslim Brotherhood. It is a state which is currently opposed to Islamic State. It is a state which is opposed to religious radicalization. It is a state which actually practices what is good for itself. And currently it feels that India and UAE, the two economies, are now getting more and more entwined with each other. Let me tell you that UAE right now has put in no less than 3 million metric tons of oil in Indian strategic reserves in Mangaluru and in Paddur to keep its options open. So in a way, UAE actually has decided that its interests lie with India. And UAE is sitting on a huge funds which can actually support India in its drive towards the top. The Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, which is the biggest sovereign fund, is a more than $1 trillion fund. The Mubadala fund is more than a $500 billion fund. And all of this is happening because Prime Minister Narendra Modi shares a very close relationship with Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, who himself has decided to transform UAE with the help of the Dubai Sheikh, and the countries are together going forward.
You talked about the bilateral investment treaty. What are the other big, announcements likely when Prime Minister Modi visits the UAE?
See, some of the announcements which are going to be made are is that, like we have a RuPay card, UAE will have a card called J1. It's JAYWAN. They are going to launch a card on the basis which is like the RuPay card. There's going to be the UPI will be allowed in UAE. The UAE will decide as to how much it will invest in India for a long-term basis, and there is also a possibility that UAE might get itself a single strategic oil reserve within India to keep, so that for future any exigencies. Beyond that, the bilateral investment treaty itself will actually entwine the two economies. UAE is already selling oil to India on a rupee payment basis. UAE has now decided to give India about 1.7 million metric tons of LNG gas, which is much required for the Indian energy needs. So actually the sky is the limit when it comes to the relationship between the two countries. Let me tell you that over the past years, a country from where criminals, terrorists used to operate and target India, today it is impossible for anybody who's anti-India and a criminal to stay in UAE. You will get immediately deported, and some 140 people have already been deported. UAE was also the country which at the height of COVID allowed the Indian Rafales to land at Al Dhafra base before they moved into Jamnagar when the challenge from China was coming in East Ladakh. So, I mean, it's a relationship which is evolving and evolving very, very fast positively.
That's great to hear. That's really a feather in the cap then for the Modi government, the 2 terms of the Modi government. The 3rd term, we don't know. That of course we'll know after the general elections to see how that goes. But tell me, because even in the India Middle East Economic Corridor, that's again a very big project that UAE is intrinsically tied up with Saudi, UAE, and the Abraham Accords and everything else to do with that. But now with the Israel war, there are a lot of naysayers saying that it's not really going to happen, because Israel has upped the ante. Now Saudi and the UAE will not sort of be seeing them on the same page. But when Nirmala Sitharaman got up to present her budget, the interim budget a couple of weeks ago, she was very clear that the India Middle East Economic Corridor is going to change. It's happening and is going to change the trajectory of Indian economy as well as its relations with the Middle East and Europe. And India is going to become a very, very important center for trade, with East Asia on one side and West Asia on the other, and being the connecting link. How do you see the naysayers saying that it's not going to happen? How do you see the IMEC corridor evolving? And what's the buzz in the policy circles about that?
See, the Middle East corridor, it was planned between India, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. It was US which joined in later. It's a phenomenal project which links the Indian port of Mundra to Fujairah port in UAE, and then it goes through a railroad all the way via Jordan, either to Haifa in Israel, or it can go to Beirut, from where it takes container ships and goes to Europe. It's a corridor which has been affected by the Israel war in Gaza, but then this is not a permanent damage. There are other options that are being explored, and what is critical to the entire thing is that this corridor actually does not stop at India. There are 6 exit points from Bangladesh, and the possibility of Bangladesh joining in through India to Europe is very, very real. My understanding is that the national security advisors of all the 3 countries, or in fact 4 countries, that would be India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, US, they're all working together to make it a very, very strong trade corridor for the future. And this will happen because everybody is committed to it.
Fantastic. So IMEC, you say, is on track. India-UAE relations are soaring, and of course that was very visible when the UAE President MBZ, who's not known to address many global events, came to address the Vibrant Gujarat Summit this year, isn't it?
Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed normally avoids speaking publicly. He did not speak at the G20 summit. He did not speak at the COP28, which is hosted by Dubai within UAE. But he took out special time for Prime Minister Modi and came to speak for the Vibrant Gujarat on January 10th, 2024. Absolutely. Prime Minister Modi now is going to is the keynote speaker for the government summit, which takes place in Dubai on February 14th. It is there where he is going to spell out how good governance is done, and he will also, if I am not mistaken, dwell over the progress made on the Middle East corridor.
All right. So all eyes on Abu Dhabi on February 14th, which incidentally is also Valentine's Day. That's testimony to the love blossoming between India and the UAE probably at this time. But thank you so much for watching this broadcast, viewers. Thank you, Shishir, for sharing all those insights with our viewers.